Number of sad news items across college football today, and two hit the Iowa community. And we will, of course, acknowledge and recognize and honor these two individuals here for the next 60 minutes here at the Voice of College Football, our Iowa show that we present each into every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time. Corey Brad is here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Corey, always good to see you, but not good to hear the news that came down earlier today concerning former Iowa offensive lineman CODY INCE.
Yeah, just devastating. I feel for Cody's family and for his fiance. He was engaged to be married. Had dealt with a lot of injuries at Iowa, but was a really good football player and was one of the better pieces of that offensive line that was struggling for a multi-year period. And obviously, football doesn't even matter when we're talking about this, but by all accounts, really good human being. I know Tyrone Tracy. I was trying to find that before we jumped on. Tyrone Tracy, former Hawkeye, who had, of course, transferred to Purdue, posted a nice tribute to him, and actually just found it. So it's on the wall for CODY INCE's obituary in the Kolstad Family Funeral Home website. And I'll just read this if it's okay, Mark. This is from Tyrone Tracy Jr. this morning. He said, I have had the honor of knowing and playing with Cody while I was at the University of Iowa. He was not only a great teammate, but an amazing person, always smiling and cracking jokes, but he took his job on the field personally, and I loved that about him. He used to always bring in deer jerky or sunflower seeds, and he made sure I got some every time. It's the little things that I will remember. Thank you, Cody, for being such an amazing person and friend. Love, Tyrone Tracy Jr. So this is obviously affecting a lot of people. And as you mentioned, all lives are equal, right? We talk about the loss of CODY INCE because he's a former Iowa football player, but the loss of Carnell Tate's mom is equally as devastating. It's all unfair. It's all incredibly tragic. And my heart goes out to each of those families. And it's unfortunate, too. We talk about the Hawkeye community on here because this is an Iowa sports show, how much loss the Iowa community has endured. Former players, I think about Damon Bullock. I think about Derek Mitchell Jr., CODY INCE. I mean, we just go down the list and young people gone far too soon. I just, it does. It makes you appreciate every day. And again, just my sincerest condolences with the INCE family and friend group and certainly the Hawkeye community, because just a sad day.
Yeah, well stated. I can't really add much to it. Yeah, we only have one life, and it's so unfortunate, so tragic, so incredibly sad to hear of somebody's passing, anyone's passing. But at a certain age, there's an understanding of what a long, healthy lifespan is. So you can more or less celebrate, in a sense, even though it is still sad, the passing of certain individuals because they've lived out a long life. But here with, you mentioned Carnell Tate, his mother at 40 years old and gunned down. And then regardless of the incident or the circumstances surrounding CODY INCE, only 23 years old. Yes, just incredibly tragic and sad. And our heartfelt condolences, as Corey has already stated, go out to CODY INCE's family, his friends, anyone close to him.
And I don't want to, I know I'm going to miss someone, but I brought up all these Hawkeyes, young Hawkeyes that we've lost. How about Tyler Sash? How about we put him right at the forefront? I mean, the legacy of Tyler Sash and the incredibly sad story that is Tyler Sash. And that pain doesn't go away. Mark, I don't think you or I have ever lost. I know I have never lost a child, but the parents of CODY INCE, I can't imagine what their day has been, and that won't go away. So just, we talk football on here, and I think we're going to have a buddy of ours talking Iowa State, the rivalry, and I'm sure we're going to throw some jabs at each other. But it's just a good reminder, if you forgot that football is really not that important at all, maybe that'll refresh your memory, because just a reality check, unfortunately.
Yeah, as Corey just stated, if we were going to devote the time and distribute the time relative to the importance, we would take all 60 minutes and discuss CODY INCE. So it has nothing in any way to do with the importance, but we just felt as though it, of course, being most important to acknowledge and recognize and honor his memory first and foremost. But only so much can be said. And so we have stated it. We appreciate the comments that are in the chat. And again, honoring his memory. And the statement you just made about children passing away, it only leads me to instantly connect that my two children are 26 and 24. So to in any way fathom that loss, I cannot do that. So again,
Ryan in the chat, Kyle Calloway. Again, I know we're going to miss some because we've lost too many, but the tragedy that was Kyle Calloway, and that I know there's a lot of his close friends that, I mean, that they live with that forever. Obviously, we all live with loss. I know I have a strong faith. Mark, we don't ever talk about that on this show, but that helps me get through loss. But the bottom line is the sting of loss hits everyone, regardless of what their belief system is, how they've been raised, what they believe for the future. The sting of loss is real, and it should be something that all of us, although we don't relish in, we should be able to get behind. There's so much division in this world, even with sports, kind of friendly division at times. I think we can all agree 23 is just too young. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. It's devastating, and appreciate all the kind words in the live chat. And when actually it was sent to me, the news was sent to me yesterday, and it's just one of those things where I saw it and I was stunned, and it wasn't until I was able to find it on the Kolstad Family Funeral Home website that I was even comfortable reporting it. It was out there, and it was, I think, pretty well known by about 8:00 in the evening. And it's just, you don't have many words to say, but it's just, I mean, he could have been playing last year, Mark, had he not walked away when he did. And that's his bit. I don't know what the reason was. I know he dealt with tons of injuries. He lost his grandfather while he was at Iowa. That was documented. He could have been playing up until last year. And so, yeah, the fragility of life is real.
All right, we will attempt to move on from here and get back to the less important, but the reason we do show up here each and every week, and we appreciate everyone's support. And here at the Voice of College Football, I don't know if there will be any connected fundraising or charities, but be on the lookout for those. And certainly if they come across my path, I'm certain we will provide that information for all of you. All right. About a week from tomorrow, Big Ten Media will be descending on Big Ten Media Days in Indianapolis. And do we know who is going to be the targeted players for Iowa who is showing up for the Hawkeyes?
We do. That's a good question. I know Cooper DeJean is one of them. He's a non-senior, so that always catches your eye. Let me grab that. I could probably guess based on me trying to recall this, but let me pull up the official release. That was a week or two ago. Yeah, so it's Cooper DeJean, Luke Lachey, and Noah Shannon. So, of course, Noah Shannon's been in this program, it feels like, for a decade now. He came back for an extra year, so he'll be kind of the vet of the group. But Luke Lachey is now the vet of the tight end room with another college football vet, and Eric All that will be joining him. And then, of course, Cooper DeJean. So kind of an interesting group there. 2 on defense, 1 on offense. I don't know how consistent that is, but I would imagine it's fairly consistent. Although, was it last year that everybody was kind of up in arms at this time because Spencer Petras was not one of the 3 captains sent to Big Ten Media Days, and how rare that was for a senior quarterback to not be at Media Day. Cade McNamara is not at Media Day. A little bit surprising. I mean, I don't know about surprising. I with his leadership skills and based on everything that I've ever heard with him and how he's connected with his teammates, I'm a little bit surprised by that. I wouldn't have been shocked if he had been the guy as opposed to maybe a Luke Lachey.
I have not verified this, but I don't believe that J.J. McCarthy is appearing at Big Ten Media Days for Michigan.
Well, you know who also didn't appear at Conference Media Days was Iowa State's quarterback. And you, Mark, you very, how do I put this? I don't want to sound accusatory with this statement, but you very conveniently passed over my questioning of Levi Stevenson the other day in your chat. I'm assuming you wanted to save that conversation for today's show.
Yes.
But I don't often get to, Mark, I don't often get to go in your chat and troll, and it was fun.
I conveniently passed it by. I knew that we were going to have this conversation here, and then we would address it then.
I did watch last night, Mark. I went back and watched. I don't know why I did it. I watched Matt Campbell at Media Day on YouTube, and I listened to some of the players at Media Day. I can tell you this: I've lived in Ames for 8 years, and there are some good people within that program. I really, for the people that there are people that think I hate Iowa State. That's just not. I don't. That's just not. I'm not saying I have a soft spot for the Cyclones, but I'm just saying there are some really good people within that program.
I think there's a way, in a sports sense, to separate the two. Meaning, I have my sports allegiances, and if anyone knows what those are, I could meet any and everyone at the University of Michigan, let's say, and think that they are just the most outstanding people, and build friendships with them. That would not stop me in any way with building friendships. Maybe me at 15 or 20 years old, it would have stopped me from building friendships. But today, none of that matters. It's stupid. So
yeah, I know exactly what you mean, by the way.
But in a sports sense, still be able to shut that off and just look at them not as people, as just wearing certain colors, certain uniforms, and having a certain team name placed on them that makes them the enemy in a sports sense.
And let me just say this, Mark, there are certain people on that Cyclones roster that I will be rooting for this fall. There just will be. But I think what you just said is fair. And that's called, let's go full circle back to this discussion of CODY INCE. That's called perspective. When you fail to have perspective and separate reality and balance from fandom, then we have a problem. So I'm looking forward to the Rip Fest here in the next 10 minutes or so. But I was able to go back and watch Matt Campbell. I a lot of questions about the gambling. I mean, I don't want to turn this into an Iowa State show, Mark, but were you able to watch all of Big 12 Media Days? Did you watch all the coaches through? I'm assuming you probably didn't see all the poolside style interviews.
I've done a rather poor job of doing my job the last week to 10 days, I guess. So SEC Media Day started yesterday, and I had realized this before. I'm in transition, so I do not have access to the SEC network. Always have had access to it. Didn't even give it a thought that I always just watch everything live and record it and go back. And I just thought, you know what, this stuff's going to be posted a couple hours afterwards. But with everything that I had going concerning my obligations with other live streams, I am just starting to catch up with SEC Media Days. I had a couple guests on in the last couple hours, And the same thing with Big 12 Media Days. I had a number of contributors come on, represent Big 12 teams, but in terms of me sitting down, watching any of that, I don't believe I saw any of it.
So I know that the majority of questions to Matt Campbell was about the gambling situation, and he kept using the term minimal or minimalistic or whatever word he used, kind of downplaying the significance that scandal was going to play on availability and whatnot. I that's kind of one of the things I want to challenge Levi on based on his intel, because I still think, based on what I've been told, there are going to be significant availability issues, at least early in the season, for Iowa State. And I don't know that to be the case for Iowa, and not everything is a done deal. And there were some lessening of the gambling punishments, I guess, if you from the NCAA here in recent weeks, which is going to help Iowa and Iowa State both. The longer this draws out, the odder it becomes. Like, you would think we have to have somewhat of a resolution by fall camp, right? Because, I mean, and Campbell, I listened to him say it. Campbell said last week, he said that basically everybody is working out right now. Everybody's working out. Now, I don't know what that means. I don't know what that means, because guys are working out, but not with the coaches. So guys are in the strength room and they're working out as a team, but they're not being coached right now. So I don't know how that qualifies with guys that are being investigated for gambling, if that changes once you hit fall camp. I mean, can they be there at fall camp if they're still under investigation? I just think we're going to have to come to a resolution here soon. I don't understand why this takes so long, but I will be intrigued to see how it affects both these teams. And both these teams play each other week 2. So that's what makes it all the more intriguing.
So when we get Levi on here, and only for a half hour, unfortunately, this time around, I enjoy kicking back and letting you two go at it, and I just refrain from the show. I just sit back like everybody else and just take it in. So here are a few points that I believe that you want to hit on. One being, just to wrap up the gambling portion of this, is that it is somewhat apparent, it appears, and we had this conversation with an Iowa sports writer. I can't recall who that is, but we had an Iowa sports writer on here.
I think it was Tom Kakert of Hawkeye Report.
Yes, right after the incident broke, that because of the rules and the legislation in state, they must have found out about someone, and then once that information's there, then you might as well just check all the student athletes that play for any of the universities, and then they form their list from there and discover other violations. So there's that. There is the component of recruiting you wanted to hit on. You know, you've made some recent observations about the disparity in recruiting in state.
Yeah, I don't know how I don't know how Levi's going to spin that. I'd love to know, because that's just is, like I said to you before, it's just is odd. It's just an odd, when you look at that 24 class, it's just weird.
Yeah. I wanted to challenge him on that point, because he was spinning recruiting in a positive light when I had him on our Big 12 Media Days last week. But I knew that you were going to bring the heavy artillery, so I didn't say anything.
I listened to most of that. What did he say about recruiting? I missed that part.
Well, he was just spinning it in a positive fashion, that it's never been better and everything's great and
it's never been better.
And so I knew.
Meanwhile, they're getting torched within the state.
I knew that this was coming, so he was mentioning other players signed from other locations.
Yeah, and I'll give them this. They have brought in a number of transfer portal guys. They lost, was it about a year and a half ago, that they was it that long ago that they lost a number of really significant players, and they went to the JUCO ranks, and they went different places. They had to, kind of like Iowa did this year. So both these teams have kind of embraced a format that I don't think either Campbell or Ferentz are super comfortable with, or were super comfortable with, and for far different reasons. So, depth is going to be really important with the gambling situation, and with there being a question of depth coming into play early on, you may see new faces early. And I'm not just talking about transfer guys. I'm talking about potential true freshmen on both sides.
There's no comparison between these two programs currently. There's no comparison historically, but there was a year or two, a season or two here in the last 3, 4, 5 years in which Iowa State was ascending, where did you believe that there was a concern that Iowa State would eclipse Iowa, that they were on equal ground at that point for as brief a time as it was?
No. Well, they lost like 7 or 8 straight games, Mark, to Iowa. And the one year they finally beat Iowa was last year, and they went 4-8. I'm not, they beat Iowa. They won on the road. There's no question about that. But I'm just saying, like, throughout that reign, if we want to call it that, minus 2020 when the two teams didn't play, and what Iowa State fans will tell you is, wow, that's the Big Ten that canceled that game. We wanted to play, whatever. They didn't play. That was the swan song for Iowa State. Let's remember, one of those really good seasons was during a really weird COVID year in 2020.
Oh, their best season. That's the best season in the history of the school.
It's funny. I was at a garage sale the other day, Mark, and I'm not a garage sale guy. I was at a garage sale, and I almost bought it, but it was $10. I don't spend that much. I was at a garage sale, and I saw this book.
Yeah.
It's never been open, in shrink wrap, and it was one of those, was it Sports Illustrated? They do like a season to remember.
Yes.
For a franchise or program, and it was Campbell holding up his trophy. Oh my goodness. They never won 10 games. Haven't won 10 games, Mark.
They won the Fiesta Bowl.
Season to remember.
They won a New Year's Six game.
How many games they win that year? 6?
9-3.
Okay, 9-3. Sorry. 9-3.
They won the Fiesta Bowl. They lost the Big 12 championship game.
Didn't even win a Big Ten title, and we're calling that a season to remember? I don't know. I guess, let's see. When was Iowa featured on the front of Sports? That's a little bit different, but the front of Sports Illustrated, was that 2010, or was it after the 2009 season? Because they, of course, kind of similar circumstance in 2009. They lost the Big Ten championship out to Ohio State, then beat Georgia Tech in the Orange Bowl. But anyways, I didn't buy the book, long story short.
I posted a video the other day asking the question, is this the year, fill in the blank, and posted the Big Ten Eastern Division. I do have all of my data for the Big Ten Western Division, and my questions concerning Iowa would be, again, not leading anyone in the direction that they're going to accomplish these things, or they can be negatives and they can be positives, of course. But since you did mention that about 2009, the Orange Bowl win against Georgia Tech, is this the year that Iowa wins a Big Ten championship for the first time since 2004? Is this the year that, of course, if they would accomplish that, it would be an outright championship, which has not occurred since 1985. I'm trying to think what other nuggets I came up with concerning Iowa.
Is this the year they have a top 100 offense? Is that one of them?
Oh, well, a top 50 offense for the first time since 2006 in a full season.
And by the way, can we address a comment in the chat real quick, Mark? From, let me see the user here. Smiles per gallon. He says this upcoming season is looking like it will be the tipping point for Kirk at Iowa. It could secure his legacy at Iowa or badly tarnish it. Would you agree? Am I overstating things? Probably overstating things, judging off your body language, Mark. And I think that's fair. However, here's what I'll say to play along with what Smiles per Gallon says. If for some crazy, insane reason this team goes like 4-8 and the offense is like as bad as it was last year, then yeah, there's going to be, well, first of all, Brian won't be coming back, right? Second of all, that's not going to happen. I think that the main reason I would probably disagree with that even being a conversation point is I don't think either you or me believe there's any reason that could or will happen. I just think the schedule shapes up way too easy, And with the pieces they have in place, I just, at worst, I see 7-5, right? We've talked about this. At worst, I still can't fathom the 7.5 over under from Vegas. But at worst, I see 7-5, and at best, maybe 10-2 or better.
We've got Levi checking in. I will address that comment with this one statement. This is where you and I differ, not because one of us is right and one's wrong, but you have an in-state, in the program perspective. I have a national perspective. So I understand diehard Hawkeye fans saying, yeah, if this is the final year for Kirk Ferentz, that this could really change our viewpoint of him. But from a national perspective, unless he wins a national championship or wins the Big Ten championship and a Rose Bowl or something like that, if he goes 4-8, goes 10-2, this is not changing 23 years of legacy.
4-8 with everything that's happened would really hurt him. 4-8 would really hurt him.
I don't think so.
Well,
from a national perspective, I don't think so. I think he's the same guy. People will view him as the same guy from a national perspective. All right, let's move it on. We've got our buddy Levi Stevenson checking in from Wide Right Natty Light on SB Nation, talking some Iowa State here with Levi.
Thanks for having me on again.
Of course.
Time in a week. Love it.
How are you?
I'm good. Hot today, though. I was outside all day.
Well, I was talking to a contributor lives in Arizona last night.
It's not that hot, but
oh my word. I realized it, but it really hit me in the face when you look at the forecast and you see 115, 117, 114 for like 10 days.
Yeah.
It's insane.
Oh, it's a dry heat.
Yeah. So. Levi, this is where I turn it over to Corey and I just let the sparks fly and I just enjoy.
There's no sparks flying, Mark.
Well, there can't be any sparks because Corey's wearing red today, so he's clearly joined the correct side of the fandom.
This is the soft spot I have for the Cyclones. Yeah. I want to address something right off the top, and then we can get into the Hunter Dekkers conversation and whatnot. But Levi, Mark said before you jumped on here that you were on I know you were on a few days ago, and you made it sound like Iowa State's been tearing it up on the recruiting trail. Is that accurate?
I don't know if I said tearing it up. I said he put a positive spin upon recruiting.
In what context?
I don't know. And what I want you to do, Levi, is explain to me how Iowa State is getting absolutely put over a barrel in the 24 class within the state of Iowa. Like, I'm not even joking. I'm not
within the state of the Iowa. Well, I mean, within the state of Iowa is a bad thing. I mean,
no, it's not. It's not a bad thing.
Iowa has always won the state of Iowa.
Not to
it's
this.
Not like any different than usual. Like, it's not like, I mean, do you want to talk about how they bent Iowa State over a barrel in 1978? Like, who gives a shit? Like,
this ain't 1978, buddy boy.
It might as well. You guys run the same offense, so who gives a shit? I guess sure. And let me. I'm gonna see what. I mean, we got a couple prospects in the state of Iowa. I mean, you guys got a bunch.
Okay.
For 2024.
How about I just share my screen?
I mean, I'm just looking at I've got 247 pulled up and looking at Iowa State's 2024 targets, and I don't see a committed to Iowa on any of them. So
what are you talking about?
What are you talking about?
Take a look at this. These are the 247 sports rankings. All right, we'll throw them up here. Okay, let's get rid of this banner. Let's get it. All right.
Right, linebacker, lineman. That's Iowa's always owned linebackers and linemen in state.
That's okay. I'm just work with me here. Grant Bricks is not coming to Iowa or Iowa State. Okay.
No.
Derek Weiskopf, Iowa. Cam Buffington, Iowa. Cody Fox, Iowa. Brevin Dahl, Iowa. Drew Campbell, Iowa. Preston Reese, Iowa. Reese Vanderzee, Iowa. You got two guys here who are Titus Cram. I don't know what the latest on his. Maybe you think Iowa State's got a shot with him. Not a single top 12 prospect has committed to Iowa State. That doesn't concern you in the least?
I don't know. I guess it depends on what you mean by concern, because
I'm not trying to rip anybody.
Let's just contextualize this, because linebackers, tight ends, and offensive linemen, generally speaking, in the state of Iowa has always gotten the top cut of those. That's just how it's always been. Okay. And Iowa State has still managed to find good linebackers and tight ends and offensive linemen in and out of state, regardless of whether Iowa has gone after them. And so, I mean, I don't know. I mean,
Okay, well, 3 of those players that are in the top 12 are skill position players. Brevin Dahl's a running back. You've got
running backs. I mean,
Reese Vanderzee's a wide receiver, who Iowa State won. I mean, you acted
I
like
mean, I would say. I mean, you can get receivers. You can get. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but you can get players outside of Iowa. Like those do exist too. Like
okay.
Iowa State has a footprint in Texas and Florida and stuff like that. We go get players from there too.
Yeah, I was doing pretty good. Yeah, I was doing
Ohio.
Pretty good.
Iowa State famously has had lots of good Ohio talent recently.
Yeah.
I mean, put it this way. Would I like to have more good in-state prospects? Yes, obviously. Like Cooper DeJean is exactly one that I know were on early and then backed off late or whatever it was. Like that is a guy in-state I would have loved to have. Like, but obviously we didn't. Our secondary is fine without him. He'd be better with him. We're fine without him. That's kind of where it is. I mean, if I got broken up every time Iowa got a linebacker or an offensive line or a tight end from the state of Iowa, I mean, we'd might as well just shut the program down. I mean, it is what it is. I mean, you'd like to do better within the state of Iowa, but outside of the state of Iowa, they've got a really good start. And, I think they're going to be fine.
I just don't. I bring this up not to just light a fire, but I bring this up because I don't recall. I just don't remember a class, an in-state class, whether that means a lot to you or not. An in-state class being so one-sided. I just don't recall it being this lopsided, and I just find that odd. I know Iowa State's coming off a bad year, but Iowa's not coming off a very pretty year either, and Iowa State did just beat Iowa. So I'm just
Iowa never comes off a pretty year. They just win games sometimes. But anyway, no, I mean,
by the way, almost every one of those prospects.
I mean, you are correct in that 24, as it currently stands, is more lopsided than it has been in previous years. But look at last year. I mean, if you look at the top 15 prospects, I mean, Iowa's got 1, 2, 3, 4. Iowa State's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So,
yeah,
I mean,
that's what I'm talking. That's what I mean.
Right. So it goes back and forth. I mean, that's just is what it is.
Well, I don't know if I would say that. It is what it is. It goes back.
It did. Literally, we had more top 15 prospects than Iowa last year. Now you have more. I mean,
you don't have any.
Definition of back and forth.
You don't have any. You don't have any top. You have nobody in the top 12.
Now,
you don't have any. You don't have a single prospect in the top 12. That's not a problem to you.
I'm gonna go back to the point of we get recruits other places besides Iowa. Like I don't think it's that. I mean, if we were in Texas, that would be a different discussion. We're not. We're in Iowa. We have to contextualize and understand that Iowa does produce good linemen and linebackers and tight ends. That's about it, outside of a few exceptions. Obviously, there are exceptions. Alan Lazard, Tim Dwight. Those guys are exceptions. But for the most part, Iowa produces good big dudes.
Okay.
Outside of that, it's pretty hit or miss. And it's just like I said, if it was Ohio, Florida, Georgia, wherever, it'd be a different story. But like you can get plenty. You can field a perfectly good football team without a single player from Iowa. We'd like to get more. We did get last year, but you can it's not that big a deal.
The only reason I bring it up is because it seems like, from my knowledge of in-state recruiting, that these two programs, more than probably many other states across the country, these two in-state programs really rely on in-state recruiting historically. Sure. Even Iowa State, even though they typically don't. I mean, last year you brought that up. They battled Iowa nicely, and you could argue they won the state of Iowa last year. So that's all I'm saying. I'm looking at the current cycle, which we're on 2024, right? That's the heavy cycle we're involved with right now. And I'm just wondering, from an Iowa State fan's perspective, there's got to be a little bit of concern there. It's like, oh, this is kind of strange. Like,
I mean, if you're looking though, like at the positions that Iowa is top heavy in, I mean, wide receiver, Iowa State's pretty deep at that position. That's not something like you can with this particular class 2024, they're being pretty picky with this one. Like they're only taking a couple receivers, like 1 or 2, just because that position is very deep and very young.
They did offer Vanderzee, by the way.
I'm sure they did. If it's an in-state kid, they're going to offer. Iowa State offers everybody. That's the like. I mean, everybody knows that. Like Iowa State gives out tons and tons of offers, like the second most in Division I, which I'm not as big on, but whatever. I know why they do it, but I mean, linebackers, I would say it's really young there, and they got a bunch of really good in-state talent last year at linebacker. Like it's just there's some of these positions where Iowa is top heavy in those, and they just don't have to be like, it's not life or death on whether or not they get Derek Weiskopf. Would we like to have Derek Weiskopf? Of course. He's a 4-star linebacker from in-state. Obviously, we'd like to have him, but we don't. So we move on and we get a different guy. I mean, if anything is, especially like if anything has been proven up to this point, is that Iowa and Iowa State can both hang on defense, but pretty much no matter who's back there, whether they're from Iowa or Florida or Texas or Ohio or wherever. Iowa State and Iowa have put up tremendously, outrageously good defenses for most of the last decade, and they do it with in-state and out-of-state players. Iowa State's currently got Iowa State and Iowa both have currently one of the best, the best two secondaries in college football, and they both have one guy from Iowa starting. Like, I mean, it's not that big a deal. I mean, you'd like to win more, but it doesn't mean Iowa State's falling apart as a program just because they didn't get a whole bunch of recruits from Iowa in one particular recruiting class.
You say Iowa has one guy starting in the secondary from Iowa?
Just Cooper DeJean, right? Or am I missing somebody?
Well, I think Xavier Wampa's got a pretty good chance of starting.
Is he starting? I have no idea.
Well,
he didn't last year, did he?
No. Well, he was a freshman last year.
Well,
they lose Kayvon Merriweather.
I feel like it's a fair question since he didn't start last year. But
and Riley Moss. Well,
one or two. You'd have one or two, but again, that's not your whole secondary.
So what's the latest on Titus Cram? Because I don't follow this stuff.
Titus Cram. I mean, I'm not as up on that one, but I've heard consistently is that Iowa State is talking to him and trying to get him. I don't know much beyond that, to be perfectly honest, but I'm not as tapped in as like Nick Osen from 247 or anything like that. But
okay, so
I mean, I think he's like Iowa State would like to have him. They are very young at running back right now.
Okay, so should we address the Hunter Dekkers situation? Because you were pretty.
The one problem here, though, is there as of right now there isn't anything to address. Not officially.
Oh, okay. Shut it down, Mark. Shut it down, Mark. Shut the Mark. We're done. Show's over. Have a good night, everybody.
I'm clarifying because the investigation is not over, and Hunter Dekkers is just a name that has come up. Like that's it. Like right now, it's just a rumor. We don't have an official word that he is done.
I'm not saying he's done. Did I ever say that?
Or suspended or involved in the gambling thing. Nobody knows that for sure.
Oh, he's involved with the gambling thing.
Oh, have you talked to him? Have you talked to the Iowa Gambling Association?
I can tell you on 100% authority he is involved with the gambling.
I've heard the same thing. Everybody's heard the same thing for the last 6 months. That's not like new information. But he's either involved or he's not. If he is, we go to the next guy. If he's not, great.
So who is the next guy? Who is the next guy?
Right now, I would say it's either J.J. Cole or Rocco Becht. J.J. Cole is obviously the better prospect, much higher ceiling as a player, but he's a true freshman. You don't love the idea of throwing a true freshman out there in his second game against Iowa.
Did he enroll early?
Yeah, he was here in January. So that's good. And from everything I've heard is that his work ethic is what you would hope a freshman QB's would be, wherever. So which, who knows? It's an off-season rumor. But it's certainly possible that he's ready to go. I don't know. That's they'll probably find that out. They'll probably know quite a bit more after fall camp. Right now, if we're gonna just assume that Hunter Dekkers is out for a few games, let's just assume he's out for the foreseeable future or whatever it is, an indeterminate number of games. If I had to guess, unless J.J. Cole is a really big standout player in fall camp, which is it's possible, he's a very talented kid. But Matt Campbell has also historically not really played a lot of true freshmen, unless they are truly outstanding, like Brace Hall, Brock Purdy, that kind of thing. If I were a bet man, I would probably say Rocco starts game one, and if that's the case, that's fine. The way I explained it last week too, and I think this is the best answer to kind of define the situation a little bit, is that the quarterback play is problem number 4 on the offense. The first thing that needs to get solved without a doubt is the offensive line, and the running backs need to be healthy, and the scheme needs to be better. if you solve those 3 problems, whoever plays quarterback is not going to be it's not really going to matter a lot who takes the snaps at quarterback because everything else will be working around them. So if those things aren't fixed and the quarterback struggles, it's because the other things are not fixed. Like, there's other priorities ahead of the quarterback that whether Rocco starts or JJ starts, if the other 3 things are taken care of, either one will be fine.
Mark, you want to chime in on this? I know you're not the idea that quarterback is still the most important position on the field. Sure. And so, like, even if those other things are fixed, if they've got a guy who doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't know his left hand from his right out there, that's going to be a problem.
My counter to that would be, let's go back to 2018 when Brock Purdy made his first start.
Keep in mind, I'm an Iowa fan, and I've watched Spencer Petras at quarterback for 3 years.
Right, so you know what bad quarterback play looks like.
Yeah, I do.
So, well, fortunately, Iowa State has had, generally speaking, very good quarterback play for the last half a decade.
You've had good quarterback play. They haven't had very good, but they've had good. Go ahead. Half a decade? So basically Brock Purdy. That's all.
And Kyle Kemp. Are we just going to ignore Kyle Kemp's 2017 season? Are you kidding? Dude went down to beat Oklahoma in his first start ever. Whatever.
Sorry.
Splitting hair. But anyways. So you are correct that quarterback is still the most important position on the field. No doubt about it. Iowa State has a history and they have established data points showing that they are, generally speaking, good at accounting for quarterbacks that aren't extraordinarily talented or whatever. Hunter Dekkers, despite his many failings and sometimes his propensity for making kind of weird decisions, he did still lead the Big 12 in completion percentage and things like that. They gave him about as good a shot as he was going to get with the personnel that was there and the scheme that was there. They gave him as good a shot as he was going to get. And Hunter Dekkers sometimes decided he had shit for brains and was just going to throw it into nowhere, and it was going to get intercepted. And for that reason, whether it's J.J. Cole or Rocco, even though, yes, they're young and we need to see what they can do in a live game. We saw a little bit of Rocco, and he was fine. They're going to adjust the scheme for the quarterback to give them the best chance to succeed. Sometimes that might just be a whole bunch of checkdowns and stuff to the tight end and underneath routes and stuff like that. And if that's what you got to do, then that's what you got to do. And that's what they did a lot last year, much to my chagrin. And it didn't work. But
that doesn't bode very well for the Cyhawk game.
No, it doesn't. And I mean, I don't know if I've been on record or not, but I'm pretty I don't have a lot of confidence in this year. I know, like, you and I were both on, like, I was definitely going to win last year, and then obviously they didn't or whatever. But
who said that?
We were both,
I don't remember ever saying.
We both agreed that Iowa was going to win last year.
We talked
back to the tape.
We can go back to the tape. Do you remember what game we were coming? Iowa was coming off of before that Iowa State game?
No,
I don't think I ever made a comment that. Oh yeah, I was.
Okay, I said that Iowa was going to win. Okay. The biggest Iowa State homer of all time, said that Iowa was going to win. Anyways, the point here really though is that I'm not expecting Iowa State to beat Iowa. I'm hoping we get a bowl game right now. That would show progress, and we're good there. I'm not expecting a good season from Iowa State or anything like that. I want to see improvement. Like, the offense doesn't need to be in 2017 Oklahoma. They just need to be fine. They need to show some improvement.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Why so the goal is basically Nebraska standards. Like that's basically so in one year, Iowa State fans have went back to saying, we're just good with not being crap every 3 to 4 years. If you go from winning a Fiesta Bowl and thinking,
hold on. Time out. You're framing that in a really weird way. You're framing that in a really weird way.
Y'all just went 4-8 last year, and you're saying, well, I don't expect.
We were the fourth youngest team in college football. Fourth
that
youngest team in college football.
That was last year. And if Matt
overturned an entire offense, including the best quarterback in school history, the best running back in school history, the 2 best tight ends in school history, and the best receiver in school history. How are you going to just expect every team to just recover from that? We're not Alabama. We're Iowa State. I mean, we have down years.
First of all, let's make sure we characterize the words that just came out of your mouth. Everything you just said was ended with in school history. So that doesn't tell me anything.
Breece Hall was a 2-time All-American and set the record.
I'm not talking about Breece Hall. I'm not talking about Breece Hall. When you bring up
Purdy broke every single passing record.
When you bring up your 2 tight ends that aren't starters anywhere in the league, I don't care about that. That means nothing to me.
They're both second.
Neither of them starters in the.
Where are you going with this?
You're bringing up these.
They were
examples.
objectively good players. If Iowa lost the best quarterback,
players.
If Iowa lost the best, Corey, listen to me. If Iowa lost 6 of the best offensive players in school history in the same season, would you not expect a drop off?
I would, because they'd be a lot better
you would
players than anybody that Iowa State has had in the last 5 years.
The point here, so yes, last season was not great. They were very young. They were also very close to doing a lot better, but they needed to do a lot of things. Not a single Iowa State fan said they were good last year, and most of us are still on board that they're probably going to struggle this year. Ideally, 2024 is we're going to get back on to try to get eight wins or something, or 8-9 wins or whatever it is, and we're back on track.
So how did that thing do? That's my question, Levi. How did that, besides just saying, well, they had some of the best players in school history that climbed them to success, how does it derail that much where it takes 3 years to get back to 8 wins? I mean, I'm not trying to compare Iowa and Iowa State, but Levi, you realize that Iowa fans, like, they had 1 4-8 year in 2012. Basically, every other year has been 8 wins.
They also play in the worst division in the Power 5.
Oh my goodness.
Iowa has the 4th easiest schedule in college football this year. You have to try. You have to like actively sabotage your team to not win 8 games in the Big Ten West. But like, I heard, because I caught the end of your.
Hey, Nebraska better really be crap.
To be
because
honest,
they came from y'all's conference.
A 6-6.
They came from y'all's conference, and they've been the doormat of the Big Ten West.
A 6-6. Well, it's kind of different. Whatever. That's a whole other conversation. But a 6-6 record in the Big 12 is better than 6-6 in the Big Ten West. But I mean, we've kind of gotten off. We've gotten away from the point.
I'm sorry,
Corey. But the problem here, Corey, is you have to contextualize everything. Iowa State is a program trying to establish a baseline of, in our down years, we go to a bowl game and we try to be 8, 9, 10 wins on our best years. That's where Iowa State is trying to get to. We're not there yet. We're trying to get there. Sometimes down years happen. Sometimes 2 in a row happen because you have lots of, like, a historic loss of experience on the roster. Iowa State went from like one of the oldest, most experienced rosters in college football to the 4th youngest. That's a huge, huge problem. In college basketball, it's not as big a deal because talent is a little bit, just works differently in basketball. But in football, that's a huge difference. Having a whole bunch of team where you've got a bunch of like freshmen and sophomores and juniors that have played almost no snaps, trying to put it all together, that's hard. And there's also a lot of other factors that went into it. There's a lot of injuries. Tom Manning kind of didn't do a good job calling an offense last year. There's a lot of things that go into it or whatever. But just because Iowa State might have 2 bad years in a row doesn't mean the whole program's gone to shit.
I understand that this comment does not belong in this conversation, but just as a side note, Ohio State took the youngest roster in the nation 1 year to the playoffs.
That's Ohio State. I mean,
but anyway, I was just as note.
It's less significant when you're at the top end and you have a roster that's 5 stars all the way through the 3 deep or whatever. When you're an Iowa State,
I understand
that doesn't.
I just was noting.
But that's it. It does speak to my point though. Like Iowa State has like 4 blue chip prospects on the roster. Like there's a handful of them. So you have to be able to rely on experience and development that's how Kansas State has done it for years. That's how Iowa State has to do it. That's how Iowa has to do it, is through development. Whatever. When was the last time you guys had a freshman that just went off? I mean, it happens.
But again, Iowa.
Would you agree that Iowa is a developmental program though? I mean, like they still exactly right. So like Iowa State is still just more to that extreme end where they have to rely on experience. And when you have such a massive overhaul of experience from really old to really young, that's hard to just pick up
all I'm saying is, Levi, this is Matt Campbell's 7th year, correct?
Actually,
his 8th year.
Yeah. And actually, one thing that didn't help too was the COVID thing, because it did this with everybody too, but like where you had guys staying an extra year, so you had it made for a whole bunch of fifth-year seniors that just then all of a sudden left.
Yeah, but
like Anthony Johnson was a fifth-year. He had started every game for 4 years and then came back for a fifth year.
But I mean, that's happening everywhere, including at Iowa. And
Iowa State was probably on the more extreme end for how much, like the frequency to which that happened. Like there was probably more people that were fifth-year senior starters at Iowa State than there were at the average school.
Can I go back? I want to go back to my comment about the tight ends, because I was not trying to rip. Was it Chase Allen and Charlie Kolar?
Chase Allen and Charlie Kolar. Yeah.
I was not trying to rip those guys. The reason I challenged you on that, and I brought up their lack of NFL success, and they haven't been in the league that long, so they could end up
one season.
Yeah, they could end up being really good tight ends. We'll see. But the reason I bring it up, listen, the reason I bring it up is because when you're using that as evidence that, well, they lost these unbelievable players. They're not unbelievable players. They're unbelievable players
for Iowa State
relative to Iowa State. But if Matt Campbell,
the only context that matters.
No, it's not the only context that matters. The context that matters is the conference and the scene of college football across the country. That's what matters. I don't care the history of Iowa State. I'm talking about the conference. We're talking about 2023, right? And if Matt Campbell is all he's cut out to be, I'm wondering why there wasn't more depth developed behind those fifth-year seniors and those sixth-year seniors that overstayed their welcome due to COVID. Why wasn't that depth created? Why are we now having to take 2 to 3 seasons to play catch-up? That's what I want to know.
Well, because if there's a bunch of fifth and sixth-year seniors playing, that's a lot of snaps that aren't going to younger players.
But other schools have Iowa managed that. They have managed that. Iowa's managed that.
The defense has. The offense hasn't.
Well, I mean, okay, we're talking about as
Iowa
a
State's
team.
Defense has managed it just fine.
The team's success is stark. Okay, the difference in team success between these two programs, and I'm talking about wins and
Iowa
losses.
State needs to be better. I don't think anybody is.
No, I don't
think anybody's arguing that.
Mark, do you see where I'm trying? The question I'm trying to get
but
Levi
Iowa
to answer.
Iowa and Iowa State are not in the same place. That they are in the same state, but they're not. They're not.
You would have had us believe 2 years ago that they were.
No. They're still like different programs from a prestige, resources, everything. I mean, like, I'm not like arguing that Iowa State and Iowa are on the same like tier level as far as like respect they get as a football program. That's obviously ridiculous, but I mean, you in like single year samples, sure, but like not on a long time frame or just as a whole. I mean, the difference so Iowa's got an established baseline that they just have they just don't ever get worse than 6-6 outside of just kind of random little flux years because there's just an established baseline. They've got a really good one thing that helps Iowa is they've got a really, really good, generally speaking, they've always got a good offensive and defensive line, and that's how you can maintain the floor of a program is by having a really good line.
By the way,
last year's wasn't great, but largely speaking, I mean, Iowa is known for having a good offensive line. And outside of
huge misnomer and huge misconception, but Iowa has not gone 6-6 since 2007. Just for the record, it's been 16 years since they went 6-6. So let's deal with facts here. It's been 16 years since they went 6-6. They had 1 year where they went 4-8. Every other year they've won at least 7 games, minus the COVID year where they went 6.
That is the most pedantic shit I've ever heard in my life.
Pedantic? It's pedantic?
You just said they haven't gone 6-6 except for that one time they went 4-8. What?
But you literally just said their floor is
7-5. Corey, you're missing the point. You're missing the forest for the trees.
Big difference.
All right. Well, not really, but I've lost my train of thought. The point is here, Iowa and Iowa State are in different places. Iowa historically is more successful. Iowa State is just now trying to get to that perennial winner status. Some programs did it 100 years ago, some did it 50 years ago, some did it 30 years ago. Iowa State is trying to do it now. Would I have liked to have it happen 100 years ago? Yeah, probably, but we didn't. And that's just where we're at now. And right now Iowa State is not at the point where you can lose an offense where half of the players were like top 2 greatest at their position in school history all at the same time and then just expect to reload just like that. So the reason that it matters that it's Iowa State school history, not Ohio State school history, is because that is the high watermark for the program. Period. Whether it's a good high watermark compared to everybody else or not doesn't matter. That's the high watermark for the program. And Iowa State does not get wins based on Iowa's best players. They get wins based on Iowa State's best players. So if Iowa State loses an offense where half of it is the best players they've ever had at that position, based on historical averages, the guy behind him is probably not as good as him right now. So that's where Iowa State is right now. They are trying to get older. They're trying to get more experienced. Last year was helpful. We'll see what they are this year. Certainly the talent is on the roster to make a big step forward to be a 6 or even a 7-5 team. Now, granted, they got a horrible schedule, but the talent is there and the room for growth is there. Now we got to see it. If they're 4-8 again and they're losing the same way as last year, then you're right that something's not right if that is happening again, because if they're dropping easy passes and they're making stupid decisions, they're bad on special teams and all that stuff, if that is still a humongous glaring issue, yes, you are correct that something then is wrong. But one bad year, and we got to find out what's happening this year. It's way too early to pass judgment on the current trajectory of the program just based on 1 year where they basically had to overhaul the entire offense, and they didn't get it right last year with what they needed to do, and they changed out all but 2 of the offensive coaches this past season. The whole almost the entire coaching staff is new. So they said, okay, we need to stop what we're doing. We're going to realign ourselves. We're going to readjust how we construct this offensive attack. We got to see what that looks like first before we start really passing any major judgments.
So I just want to come to a common ground with you. You can understand, Levi, why I asked the question, because of 2 things: the 4-8 season being one, and the statement you made about, well, if we can get to 6-6, I'll be happy. And then the bigger thing that we led with, the recruiting in 2024, which I think sends up a red flag regarding the program. Is it fair to say that the ascension that was made then, from your perspective, the ascension that was made to the heights of 2021, those 2 years, am I getting those 2 years right? Though that was kind of
2017 through 2020 were kind of 2020 was the Fiesta Bowl. So that was the kind of the peak so far.
But I'm assuming, though, that Iowa State fans, yourself included, assumed or at least thought at the time that you had gotten past the point of having to retreat to 4-8 type of years. Is that fair to say?
It's a good question. I'll put it this way. I'm not saying we're past the point where we can say we'll never have that again. I think we're to the point where we can be disappointed with that and say 4-8's bad. We should have been better. I mean, literally, they were 2 catches away from 6-6, 2 drop catches away from 6-6, and they really probably should have been 7-5 or even 8-4. They should have beat Texas Tech. There's a couple other games in there that they probably should have won. 6 of their 8 losses were by less than 1 or by 1 score or less. So I mean, that's sometimes that's a lot of bad luck. Sometimes it's just misexecution, whatever it is. But that shows you that they were not that far away from being fine or whatever. But they didn't. There was plenty of times where they didn't execute properly. So basically, you're kind of halfway there. So we're to the point where we can be like, okay, we need to get better from 4-8. Like, that's not acceptable. But like, to say that we can't, like, we should never ever expect to have a down year. We're definitely not there yet. I mean, we're still, even right now we're recruiting as good as we ever have, and we're still, middle of the conference in the Big 12. So I mean, when you're still there, when 98% of your roster is 3-star players, you can't. Eventually, you're gonna have down years just because of experience and things like that. I mean, 3 stars. I mean, if you go like on 247 and look at what 3-star prospect ratings mean, is that this is a developmental prospect that can turn into a draft pick later on. I mean, that's how they define a 3-star. How they define a 3-star player.
Again, not to compare, but it doesn't happen at Iowa the way you're describing. Iowa's overwhelmingly full of
and right now Iowa State and Iowa currently does a better job of developing those, like, offensive line, defensive line, the front 7 on each side, the heavy packages. Iowa does a better job of developing those players. Period. I mean, I'm not even going to try to argue against that. So they've done a better job of developing the part of their roster that you need to have developed to have a high floor. Iowa's done a better job of that. No doubt about it. That's why they fired their offensive line coach and they fired the strength and conditioning coach this past season, because they weren't getting it done. And
Iowa's offensive line coach ain't getting it done right now either. So
sure, but I mean, historically, Iowa though has generally gotten it done on the offensive line historically, or at minimum they've produced individually great offensive linemen. Iowa State really hasn't done that. I mean, 2020 the line was pretty decent. They weren't great, but they were fine. But other than that, it's been pretty underperforming. I'm a believer, and lots of people around the program seem to be very, very high on Ryan Clanton, the new offensive line coach, which they got from UNI. Everyone has raved about him from day one. We'll see. Offensive lines take a while to develop. I would have liked it. I would have liked the take a while to develop to start 5 years ago, but it is what it is. We're here now. We got to do what we can with what we got and try to develop what we have and try to recruit players that fit what we're trying to do better. And that's what I would say it's trying to do. And to the recruiting point on 2024, yeah, would like to have more prospects from Iowa, but the prospects they do have committed are very, very good. Like a big recruiting win they just got was Cooper Alexander. He's a tight end out of Oklahoma. Oklahoma wanted him very, very, very bad. And his tape is outstanding. He looks the part of a could start as a freshman kind of guy. Oklahoma wanted him really bad, but Iowa State took him right out of the middle of Oklahoma. That's a big time recruiting win. Keaton Roscop, tight end out of Linn-Mar, really like that. That's a good in-state guy. Tight end out of Cedar Rapids. That's usually Iowa territory or whatever. So it's one of those things. They've got some really nice players in the roster. They've been doing a good job in Arizona and Wisconsin recently. They've gotten especially linebackers and defensive ends out of Wisconsin. They've done a really good job on. They've been getting some good guys out of Minnesota. So they've been finding quality players elsewhere outside of Iowa. But yes, you are right. We would like to get more in-state talent, but they're doing what they can, knowing that this year Iowa got a chunk of them right at the top, and that what's ever at the bottom that isn't committed is probably going to be a developmental prospect. And if you want higher end talent, Iowa State's going to have to go out of state, and it is what it is. That's the current situation Iowa State is in. They're trying to do the best they can with that set of circumstances.
Last question for me, and then Mark, if you want to finish this thing up, whatever. Real quick, and this is a quick fire, Levi. So you got to give me your thoughts. Name your starting offensive line right now.
I'm gonna have. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll have to come back to that one. I don't know off the top of my head.
You said defensive backfield earlier.
Yeah.
They lost some pieces, right?
Defensive backfield? No.
At safety?
Well, they lost Anthony Johnson, but they've got guys that Iowa State rotates like 12 guys in the secondary. So the guys that are filling in for him have played tons and tons of snaps.
So who are the guys you're looking for?
TJ Tampa and Miles Purchase are the best cornerback doing the Big 12 for sure, and in the conversation for top 5 in college football. I mean, they're outstanding. Iowa State's always had really good safety play. Bo Freeler's he's a stud back there. He'll be probably first, second team All Big 12. Malik Verdon played really well. Jeremiah Cooper's played really well back there. They've had tons of guys that have played lots and lots of snaps back there. Darian Porter he'll be in the rotation at corner. He'll be a backup corner. He's from Bettendorf. He was a 6'4", 200-meter champion receiver, and he converted to corner a couple years or before last season. Last season he played really well, and I'm assuming he takes another progression forward. That's another really nice piece to have back there. He can slot in at the nickel. He can play on the nickel back, or he can just come in for Miles Purchase or TJ Tampa. Iowa State's got tons and tons of depth and talent back there. I'm for a defense that has had a really, really outstanding linebacker core and defensive line for those were the strengths of the defense, and then the secondary was always a little bit behind. The secondary is actually the strongest unit on the defense now, and that's pretty fun.
Cole, thank you for the contribution. We've got Nebraska does not deserve these shots. Corey?
I disagree. Nebraska always deserves those shots.
One thing we can agree on, Levi.
Absolutely. Nebraska can go to hell.
We've got Cole coming back with also Nebraska standards versus Iowa standards.
I mean,
It depends.
recency bias, if you want to call it that.
I mean,
but
you
That
guys
all
had,
depends on what
Nebraska
time
hired
frame.
Scott Frost, and that's all we need to talk
That
about.
all depends on what time frame we put on those standards.
Nebraska was only good because they had 125 people on the roster, and they were the only people on TV. Fraudulent.
There is
national
some
power.
truth to that.
Fraudulent historic
I
power.
don't think that's the entire narrative, but there's a lot of truth to that.
It's the only one that's in my head.
Levi, thank you so much for being here. Is there
problem.
reason for folks to check out you find folks at Wide Right Natty Light? What's going on there?
Just getting ready for fall. Just this offseason has been such a weird one because there is a lot going on with the gambling and stuff like that, but there also isn't. Like we there's lots of stuff going on in the rumor mill, and like, oh, this is happening. This could potentially be really impactful. But we also can't really talk about it because there's not actually any public anything about it other than we just know there's an investigation happening. So it's been simultaneously the most boring and interesting offseason at the same time. I'm just ready for fall camp to start so we can actually just start talking about football. Iowa State fans desperately need football games at this point because we're just tired of talking about. So it's a lot it's really similar to the off season between 2020 and 2021 when Iowa State was preseason top 10 and all that, and we were just all summer it was talking about, well, they can do this, they can do this, they can do this, they can make the playoff if they do this, they can do this, or whatever. And obviously it didn't work, that didn't happen, but we just got to a point where like July we just kind of got tired of talking about it. I was like, I just want to play football at this point. I don't even care. I just want to play football right now, and that's where we're at. I just want actual football to be happening. Even if it's just behind closed doors at practice, I just want football to start.
Amen to that. I think we're all there as college football fans. Join Levi on SB Nation's Wide Right, Natty Light. And there is a game between these two in week 2. So we're looking at less than 2 months away from that clash, that mighty clash of 10-7 the last time they got together.
That's probably what's going to be a good describer for it. First one to 13 is going to win that game. If any team makes it to 13, I don't know.
So we'll have you back at that point, Levi.
Sounds good.
We appreciate you stopping by.
Believer you are.
What was that, Levi?
It depends on how much of a Cade McNamara believer you are.
I'm a believer that Cade McNamara is going to disappoint a lot of Iowa fans. Not because he's going to be bad, because I think a lot of Iowa fans are putting him.
Think he's going to be like Ricky Stanzi, or he's going to be
they think
CJ Beathard or something like that.
Well, no, I don't even think that. I think a lot of fans, certainly not me, but I think a lot of fans are putting him on an echelon that we haven't seen because he won a Big Ten championship at Michigan and all. I'm a believer in Cade McNamara.
That whole dynamic is really interesting to me, just with like the NIL stuff with all of that and how that whole dynamic's working, where he's a really like active on social media and all that stuff too, which is very atypical of an Iowa player. So and of just Kirk Ferentz's whole MO. So that's
the transfer portals and NIL is very atypical to
Sure, yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's a really interesting dynamic, because like the current state of college football is so like anti-Kirk Ferentz. It's just, or like what you typically think of with Kirk anyways. And it's just kind of, it's just an interesting thing, I guess.
And yet he's acclimated, at least in the last year, with the portal and with NIL. He's done a pretty good job of acclimating. They did a pretty good job recovering from some severe blows via the transfer portal by going out and getting McNamara, going and getting Caleb Brown from Ohio State, and adding some other pieces along the offensive line, on defense, etc.
The problem is he didn't fire his kid. That's the problem.
Oh, I agree. It's a problem. But it could be overshadowed by some really good personnel. Could be.
Who knows? And there's so many questions for both teams that it's just, I don't know. Granted, like Iowa's probably got, I would definitely has less questions, and they have a far easier path to their championship game and stuff like that.
Yes.
But so they're like, I caught the end of your conversation before this about whether a bad season from Iowa would taint Kirk Ferentz's legacy. And I think you're both right, actually. Whereas Mark said, like, are people going to think less of Kirk as a coach because if he wins 5 games this year? Not overall, not really. Will it taste bad and will it have a bad taste in your mouth for a few years? Probably.
But it
So
would
it's
take
kinda-
so much. It would take so much for them to have a bad season.
I would agree. Like you would like something would have to go seriously wrong.
Yeah.
Like have to have like a catastrophic number of injuries, or
Cooper
Brian
DeJean
would have
tears
to,
his knee.
yeah,
Tate
or like
McNamara tears
Brian
his
Ferentz
knee.
would have to just have an all-time pants shitting or something like that. I mean, like it would.
It would take. It would take more than that, actually.
Right, exactly. Like there don't have to be like active sabotage.
He
to
did
not
that
win a bowl game.
Hey, he did that last year, Levi, and they won 8 games.
I mean, and that's really kind of the point, is that the floor is so high on Iowa for this season that you're right that like it would have a really bad taste in your mouth for probably a few years at least. But then if let's say this is his last season, even if he goes 4-8 this season or whatever, and this is his last year and he's just done or whatever, and let's say special teams coach, what's his name?
LeVar Woods.
Yeah, because I've heard his name pop up quite a bit for who could succeed Kirk or whatever. Let's say he comes and then I was back to winning 9 or 10 games. Nobody's going to give a shit about Kirk. They'll just move on. And I mean, it's just how it is. I mean, college football is a what have you done for me lately sport. So if LeVar Woods takes over in next year and Iowa wins 9 games, nobody is going to give 2 shits. Like that's
so nobody gives a crap. Nobody cares about Hayden Fry.
I mean, you guys probably do too much, but that's no. I mean,
years.
but Hayden Fry also had bad years, but nobody remembers them because that's not his legacy. His legacy is that he basically created the Iowa football program, and I mean, that's just
he restored the Iowa football program.
Yeah, after they were cowards and didn't play Iowa State for like 25 years, but
Well, yeah, I think it's a little bit sliding of. Or
that
toward,
was literally 50 years ago. It doesn't
matter.
But, anyway. but like Hayden Fry's legacy is restoring or rebuilding or whatever it is. He created the Iowa program as it is today, literally because there's been one coach since he retired or whatever. And nobody remembers that he did have bad seasons in there, but nobody remembers that. Just like Kirk had plenty of good seasons. He took Iowa to some all-time highs or whatever, or close to them. And that's what people are going to remember Kirk for. They're not going to remember him for a bad 4-8 season at the end, because everybody very few people not very many coaches get to end their careers on good term, with a good season at the end, because usually you just stick around. Most coaches end on bad seasons. They end their careers on bad seasons. That's just because that's what it is, and that's just how it works. So, I think you are right, Corey, in that it would taste bad in your mouth for about 5 years, maybe 3 years or less, depending on how the successor does. But Mark is also right in that long term, 10 years down the road, people would not think of Kirk Ferentz for that last 4-8 season versus his whole career. I think that's the fairest assessment.
This is what I simply want out of the Iowa season. I want that 25 point per game standard to be up in the air going into the bowl game. I want it to be at like 24.3 or whatever. I want controversial calls or decisions to greatly impact that in that game.
Going forward on 4th down, up like 30 because they needed another score in the red zone trip, Mark.
Which means that they will definitely not do that.
They need the 20. Mark's referring to the Brian Ferentz contract, though, Levi.
I suppose. I personally, for Iowa State, I hope they start rolling the dice. I hope they roll the dice every bit they can this year, because this year's kind of a you might as well do it because it can't get worse type of thing. So let's just roll the dice and see what happens. Because Matt Campbell is a heinously conservative coach, and there's been plenty of times where that has annoyed the absolute hell. I mean, sometimes it works out, and I look like a dumbass, and there's a reason he's coaching Division I college football, and I'm not. But there's been times where he's too conservative, so I would like Iowa State to roll the dice a little bit more.
Real quick, better receiver, Jalen Noel or Caleb Brown?
I mean, I don't actually know much of anything about Caleb Brown. I guess what did he do at Ohio State? I guess
nothing.
Okay. I guess based on college production, I guess Jalen Noel, but I don't.
He was a part of the best position group in college football at Ohio State. So
sure, I'll admit I don't know enough about him to say anything. I mean, as a prospect, surely him, but I don't know. Within the context of their respective offenses, probably Jalen Noel.
I was just trying to think of the last time, if Caleb Brown can end up fulfilling expectations, when's the last time we would have said that Iowa had the better
top
wide
end receiver?
Yeah. It's been a long time because of guys like Hakeem Butler, Alan Lazard, Xavier Hutchinson.
Who was the last Iowa receiver that you would say this is like the dude? Like that was just a dude.
Marvin McNutt.
Okay.
And that was 2000.
And he would have been 2011. Trying to think who Iowa State would have had then, like Quentin Bundridge, but he would have been young. Yeah, probably Marvin McNutt would probably be the last time you would say that Iowa had the better top end receiver.
Amir Smith-Marset, Brandon Smith, those guys.
They also played when Alan Lazard and Butler were there. So yeah, that's probably I would say there. I would say don't sleep on Jaden Higgins. I would say Jaden Higgins will be the Eastern Kentucky transfer. He'll be the number one. He'll take Xavier Hutchinson's spot. And everything I've heard of him is he's been super, super impressive. So I would, if I had to put him money on one guy being the leading receiver for Iowa State this year, it'll be Jaden Higgins, I would say.
So there you go, Mark. 2 FCS receivers to follow. That's Seth Anderson at Iowa from Charleston Southern and Jaden Higgins. Jaden Higgins, is that what you said?
Jaden Higgins.
No relation to Jay Higgins, Iowa linebacker, I assume.
I would assume. I have no idea. And then because because you'll have Jaden Higgins, and then you'll have Jaden Knoll, and then probably Dimitri Stanley as the other receiver on the outside there, I would say. It's a group that's got tons of vertical speed. I'd love to see them try to chuck it deep a little bit, but we'll see. You need an offensive line to protect your quarterback long enough to chuck it deep.
And you need a quarterback that can make that throw.
Hunter Dekkers can absolutely make that throw. He did a ton last year, but
if Hunter Dekkers is available.
Well, what I'm saying though is like they theoretically have a quarterback on. Well, and JJ Cole, as arm talent wise, is on par with Hunter Dekkers. So we'll see. He may not be ready to play, so it might not matter. But the arm talent is there with JJ Cole to have a vertical offense. But we'll see. We thought they were going to do that last year, and they just didn't. They didn't even try. So, and part of that is your offensive line that you have to have together to. I mean, they have to protect the quarterback long enough to be able to get the receivers downfield. I mean, that's just, and Iowa State's offensive line just straight up didn't do that last year. So I don't know. We'll see. The offensive line is priority number one. I mean, period. That's what it is. If the offensive line looks better and the rest of the position group, I mean, if the offensive line is better, the scheme's going to get better. Every position group is just going to look better because that's just what the offensive line, that's the effect a good offensive line has or whatever. If they get that together, Iowa State's offense should be quite a bit better than it was last year, and the defense is going to be every bit as good as it was. So I would say if that happens, Iowa State's a 7-5 football team, which would be phenomenal as a turnaround year with probably a freshman or redshirt freshman quarterback. That'd be great.
We do this each and every.
You tried signing me off like 20 minutes ago, Mark. Good luck.
We're going to do it again because I got to go. Levi, we can actually bring you. We can have you do the car wash tonight, and you can come over with me to the Nebraska show next, and you can insult some Nebraska fans.
I'll throw some fireballs out of Nebraska.
Well, I could bring both of you over to the Nebraska show for both of you to
Corey and I, we'll both wear this.
I would like to just watch.
We'll both be on the same team. I don't give a shit.
All right, Levi, we appreciate you. And of course, we'll have you, if you've got the availability, jump on prior to the big game in week 2.
Absolutely. And since it's in Ames, Corey, we'll have to have you by the tailgate. You can come by and hang out.
You're going to poison my food?
And I'll give you the shittiest, warmest beer I can find. Give you an ice cold Ames lager is what you're going to get.
Your natty light is of no interest to me.
Well, we're drinking Ames lager this season, so.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
You're betraying your name.
I mean, we've always been Busch Light drinkers anyways. So the Natty Light isn't what beer we drink. It's the Larry Eustache thing or whatever. So we're Busch Light drinkers by trade, but now we're drinking Ames Lager because, that's the NIL beer. So that's what we're drinking.
I'll be drinking the Golden Ale.
The Swarm one?
The Swarm one.
Have you tried it?
I actually haven't. My father-in-law sent me a picture of him trying it the other day, and he said it's really good. I was surprised that
I was kind of curious because I'd heard some people that really liked it and some people that were kind of iffy about it. I'm not like, it depends. I guess it probably depends if you like golden ales too, which that's kind of a Who knows? From what I understand, is Ames Lager was intended to be pretty darn close to Busch Light with a little bit more, with the intention of being able to people just buy and just start slamming cases of it at tailgates. I think was the intention, which honestly, that's exactly what they should have done. So we'll see. I supposedly because they were launching it here in the next couple weeks, and I think Wide Right's going to be there as an influencer at the tasting. So
nice.
We'll get a first crack at it. Hopefully, it'll be fun. I know we're going to shotgun one on the bridge. It's going to be good.
All right, folks, follow the lead of LFG. He just hit the like button and encouraging everyone else to do the same. We do this every Tuesday, not with Levi, though, but every Tuesday at 4:30 Central Time. And make it on back next week as we preview Big Ten Media Days at that point. All right, and talk about how much better the Big Ten is than the Big 12.
It's just not. It's just not. Garbage.
All right, we'll have you back sometime to.
All right, thanks for having me, Mark. I'm perfectly happy to come here and debate Corey's ridiculous opinions.
Well, that would be 2-on-1. The Big Ten conversation.
It's funny though, because after last week's show, when I made the comment that the gap between the Big 12 and everybody else in college basketball is like bigger than the gap between the SEC and everybody else. I actually looked this up because I was like, I wanted to get my numbers straight. So I looked this up because Sagarin does football and then Ken Palm that's the thing for basketball. So they both do conference ratings.
Pronounced Sagarin, by the way.
Yes.
Sagarin. Okay. Sagarin. So I went and looked up Sagarin. So at the end of the year, he does a wrap up of each conference and their median rating. The way I read it is basically he ranks the conference based on how the middle of the pack does. So basically, he takes the really bad teams and the really good teams out of the conference and basically ranks the conferences based on the upper 50%.
We can stop right here. It's flawed to begin with, but keep going.
Well, I don't know if it
it doesn't flawed system. We're taking teams out of the conference.
Well, I might be explaining it wrong. It doesn't remove the outliers, but it weights the meat of the conference.
Outliers
again. That's
what would
that's
you
a
consider,
faulty system.
What would you consider what would you consider USC in the Pac-12 other than an outlier?
Part of the Pac-12. They're part of the Pac-12,
but they're.
So they're going to be weighted less than the fifth place team in the Pac-12.
What?
They're going to be weighted less than the fifth place team in the Pac-12. That makes no sense. Well, not
necessarily just the fifth place team, but it's the middle of the pack as far as their metrics go. Like I said, I might be explaining it wrong, but basically, he ranks the conferences at the end of the season. That's really the important part here. And then Ken Palm does the same thing. If you look at because he breaks up the conferences that have divisions by divisions, and then the ones that don't, so it's like SEC West, Big 12, Big 10 East, or something like that. And actually, I think that's actually how it was. It was SEC West, Big 12, Big 10 East, as far as 1, 2, 3 for strongest conferences in 2023 for football. Ken Palm had the Big 12 as the number one basketball conference, no question. But the gap between the SEC and the Big 12 last year was quite significantly smaller percentage-wise than the gap between the Big 12 and the Big 10 in basketball last year. I looked it up. I was objectively correct that the gap between the Big 12 and everybody else is big.
Objectively correct, Mark.
Yes,
you're objectively correct.
Based on those two hand-picked metrics that support
if the system is correct, if it's a solid system,
yes.
Based on what you told me, it's not.
Mark, would I pick anything other than a solid system?
I would hope not, but I'm questioning it.
You and I would.
Yeah, you're right. We do the math, and you guys don't.
How many?
There's a reason they gave us the engineering school.
All right, folks.
All right, yeah, we can finally end this thing.
See y'all back here next week. All right.